Farmers and agricultural stakeholders. Get ready for the biggest expo of the year, the Mkulima Expo 2021 semi-virtual edition, taking place on Thursday 11th and Friday 12th of February from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Brought to you by Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization, CALRO, and the Standard Media Group. The theme of the two-day expo is resilience in the agriculture sector amidst COVID-19 pandemic, focusing on food and nutrition sufficiency, digital technologies and ICT in agriculture, women and youth in agriculture, public-private partnerships in agriculture, food safety, livestock health and welfare.
Good morning. The Mkulima Expo 2021 is underway at the CALRO headquarters here in the capital, Nairobi, under the theme Resilience in the Agriculture Sector amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, quite an array of topics have been covered since yesterday. We did see women and the youth in agriculture. We also saw nutrition and food security in terms of sustainability, and we also saw the role of technology when it comes to bolstering profits and production in the agriculture sector as a whole. Now today we focus of course on a very critical topic, that is public-private partnerships. Now in Kenya, PPPs are gaining acceptance as a model of financing projects, improving efficiency, productivity and also reducing unemployment. Now for years, PPPs have focused mainly on large infrastructure projects. We're talking about the thicker roads, the railway, the airport constructions. Now, their application in the agriculture sector, and particularly small-scale farmers, is quite limited. On today's forum, we discuss the importance of PPPs in harnessing technology and market access to improve the livelihoods of poor smallholder farmers, create food security and increase agricultural competitiveness. Now on the panel, of course, we have Dr. Monica Waiganjo from CALRO. Of course, she's joining us live from the headquarters. And also we have George Osure from Syngenta Foundation. Let me just give you a snapshot of their bios. Now, Dr. Monica Waiganjo is the Director of Partnerships and Business Development at the Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization. She has a wealth of research experience with over 30 years at CALRO. George Osure is the Regional Director of Syngenta Foundation East Africa. The foundation supports partners who work in agriculture in developing countries and emerging markets. He also has 30 years experience as an agricultural engineer specializing in smallholder irrigation, having worked in the public and private sector. Of course, welcome to the program. An A-star panel and quite an exciting introduction when it comes to the agriculture sector. And let me start off with you, George. I mean, when you look at the agriculture sector as a whole, and I think about PPPs, the first thing that comes to my mind is thicker road. It's the airport construction. But I haven't really heard much when it comes to the agriculture sector. Why is this?
Thank you very much for having me here. And the reason why we've not heard much about this is the nature of the way information is disseminated. At the moment, once we have CALRO on board, and I'm sure Monica will elaborate this, we will find that a lot of the work they do goes into the public and into the private sector. The maize seeds that we buy and end up converting into maize flour for ugali, that is a very good example of a PPP, because they've done the research as public side and provided to the private sector to grow a seed and disseminate as a maize flour. The second reason for this is that previously, what the Standard Group is doing now, a lot of the information was kept away from the public. And that's why there is now facilitators like Syngenta Foundation, the private sector in the Seed Traders Association, the Agrochemicals Association, a lot of facilitators that are now disseminating this information. So I'll stop it there to allow the conversation to proceed, but it's the manner of the information, and it's been provided in a very complex manner, and now it's been distilled and more simplified.
Of course, George, from your discussion, you're talking about the whole value chain as a whole. Is it the fact that we have to incorporate them at different levels? Because like you're talking about, it comes to the maize all the way to processing the flour. Is it the fact that we have to incorporate them at various stages of the value chain?
It's a two-way traffic on that, and that's a very good point you're making, that if we consider it as a value chain, you automatically now start creating nodes and areas of interest for businesses to grow employment and to attract all sorts of participants on actors on their way. But if we consider it as a single unit, one of the most important things that now we will hear about, of course, from Calro is that a lot of these issues are now being demand-led. Most people are talking of nutrition. They want certain types of vegetables, a lot of zinc maybe in the beans to help the skin quality and so on. So that is the reason why we look at it in both senses. But the value chain approach is good because it creates a demand-led situation and allows for the micro to transit to the macro.
Dr. Monica, let me just rope you in now into the discussion. He did, of course, speak about the whole value chain, but let's just get back to basics. How exactly are these PPPs formulated? Are we talking about incorporating research? Is it the government agencies? How exactly do they come into play?
Okay, as you have rightly said, PPPs is a new concept that has not been very well known by many people, but we want to say that our government has really come in to try to make it more understood, because we already have a PPP Act 2013, which has described most of those hurdles that may be coming up in a PPP arrangement. And also, we are aware that in the agricultural sector development strategy of 2010-2020, it outlined very well and encouraged such partnerships. This is where we really want to go, because we may not be able to engage ourselves in the full value chain, as my counterpart Osure has said. But if we engage other partners, we will now be able to do what we know best, and they help us to do what they do best, so that we can now complete the whole value chain. If I may just go back and try to think about PPPs, it is important because this must be business-oriented, and there has to be a good formalization of the agreement, in which we have to identify what are the areas that we want really our partner to come on board with. Because in a PPP, there has to be benefits gained by each partner. For example, when we think of Caro, we are good in research. We are developing new technologies and innovations. We now have a partnership with Standard Group, Media Group, and they are good in the media dissemination. So Caro will do the research and access the technologies so that they can be disseminated in a digital manner, in an easier way for the farmer, who is our target, to be reached, and all the consumers to have this information in the best way. So we are saying that going forward, this is the way that we need to encourage many organizations, many institutions to engage in. As English saying goes, when you are alone, you can walk very fast. But when you are together, you will walk very far.
And Dr. Monica, before we even go back to talking about teamwork, you did, of course, mention some of the critical areas where the PPPs can tap into. And yesterday, during the opening of the expo, we did discuss some of the issues that are affecting the agriculture sector as a whole. And we did see lack of credit come out as one of the key concerns when it comes to developing the sector. We also saw the fact that we're having an aging population when it comes to the farmers. And it's becoming even more critical, considering that we need food security in the next 10 years. However, the knowledge transfer has not been transferred to the youth, because either they do not have access to the skills, or they do not have someone who they can get the mentorship program from. Just talk to us a little bit how the PPPs actually get involved when it comes to access of funding and at the same time when it comes to skills transfer.
Thank you. That's a very important comment, because the partners really need to especially understand how they are going to work together. And usually in PPPs, we find that a very good output is human resource development. And when we talk of, when we are talking of credit, we have to really understand that the farmer who needs this credit may not be very conversant with the issues that really come in through the borrowing or through the use of this credit. So the human resource development will be very key. And this one should be done by outlining very well your objectives and knowing the responsibilities of each of the partners, so that at the end of this agreement, all will have a win-win situation.
A win-win situation indeed, Dr. Monica. George, when you're talking about these public-private partnerships, who exactly are these people? Who are we talking about? Is it the research institutions? Is it the government as a whole? Who are they?
That's a good question, and it actually comes down back to the act which Dr. Monica talked about, and which is based on the structure of the organization that is called public. It's defined by an act. So, for an example, a very simple one is if you are looking for potato seeds, you need support from the public side. You'd either go to KALRO to get your license to grow it, and you'll get certification through the Kenya Plant Health Inspection Service. So that's one side of it. The second side of it, why we have public in these partnerships, is there's some element of cost that we are looking at, how you look at the investment. Research, as KALRO will let you know, it's a very expensive exercise and takes many years. And the private sector wants returns. People want salaries today, not in 5 years' time. So that also helps in the sense of they remove part of the costs and actually de-risk the value chain, because they've got it right up for you, something that is already ready. Yesterday, another good example I saw in the exhibition at the KALRO headquarters was a biotechnology division or presentation that was done by a very elegant young lady, very precise, and knew what she was doing, because she talked about selling small tissue culture plantlets to the public. And she had pineapples, she had ginger, she had tissue culture bananas, and all these are technologies that will make entry into the market easier. So public-private partnership de-risks because of the long-term investment. At the same time, it facilitates entry into the market. The next side of it is, again, it creates a legal pathway, an information pathway. Those two work together. The legal pathway means that if you now want to export those pineapples, you now have an organization to help you inspect and minimize the effects of disease internationally. You don't have to travel to the other country to find out which diseases affect you. So I'm just looking at the actual operational elements. In that sense, therefore, your concern now will be collection from the field, growing, collection from the field, packaging, and sending it to the other country. And that way around, you will have invested to the area, as precisely mentioned before, in the area you know best. But if you add breeding, you add everything else, you're looking at 10, 12-year cycles in terms of investment. So it's actually a means of segregating organizations, putting the organizations where they belong, such that our legal systems recognize them and they speak to each other in terms of conveying information, resources, and eventually financial returns all along. Thank you.
And Dr. Monica, I know he mentioned KALRO, of course, you know, if you're a farmer, or if you have an idea of farming, how you can just walk into, and of course KALRO will be able to give you the necessary information when it comes to this. But aside from KALRO, what else can I do? Assuming that I'm a farmer seated at home and I need access to information, I need inputs, I need more to increase my production, I need more to continue rearing my animals in an efficient and sustainable manner. Where else can I get this information? Or alternatively, I have the idea, that is, I want to start a venture when it comes to agribusiness or agripreneur as a whole. What do I do aside from walking into KALRO? Who else can I tap into when it comes to the public-private partnerships?
Okay. There are, as we know, very many KALRO centers that are distributed all over in about 32 counties. But more importantly, we have digital information. Our website has digital information that we have currently upgraded through the CAOP. The CAOP platform really will be able to, if someone wants to get this at their convenience without maybe walking to the centers that are within their areas, they can be able to get this information from these platforms and download according to what they need. This one, of course, may probably not be very appropriate for those who are not digital, well acquainted with digital platforms. But I'm saying this because it has really proved to be very useful to many people who want to venture into farming and also who want to have their questions answered. And it also targets the youth and those people who want to do agriculture as a business. However, for that farmer who may not be able to reach through these platforms, they can work for free in any KALRO center. And when they mention what they need, we have in our charters, we have description of where you can get the information, and they'll be able to kind of connect you to the relevant person who will be able to answer. This notwithstanding, I think you must appreciate the forum that we are having today and yesterday, where people can be able to walk in and also enjoy the information from the Mkulima TV, KTN News, etc., and be able to get a lot of information, and then later on, just target the information they exactly need. We also hold field days. I'm sure KALRO really does a lot of field days within a year, but because of the COVID-19, as we have realized, it's not now very much easy to hold big gatherings. So we are encouraging people to adopt digital communication and also be able to reach as many platforms as can be possible. Now, I wanted also to mention that there is a lot of potential of PPPs, especially in KALRO, because we are talking of the value chains, and we, as we do the research, even the partners can come on board in the research process. For example, in trial of varieties, in testing of equipment, and in such areas where we are sure that we are going to come up with a product. And this will help even the partner to be able now to market it in a very easy way, because the commodity has now gained a lot of popularity, and people will have confidence if they know that this commodity is coming from KALRO, because we do have a good name for the products that we produce. Thank you, and the services.
Dr. Monica, as you've clearly highlighted, of course, we are live at KTN News as well as Farmers TV, and we, of course, breaking down when it comes to agriculture matters and the role of technology and other key factors as a whole when it comes to bolstering production as well as rearing animals. Dr. Monica, I love the fact that you roped in the youth, because yesterday when we had the discussion, we had a segment whereby we were discussing pitching as an agripreneur or in agribusiness. And we were discussing the fact that we are having so many youth who are doing more of copycats. Oh, I'm seeing my friend who's successful maybe in rabbit keeping. I want to do rabbit keeping as well. And you're seeing the other one probably in milk production, and you also want to tap into that. When it comes to pitching for these agribusiness ideas so that you can have partners on board, what exactly do you look for? And what are some of the mistakes that you've noted so far that people can do better so that they can incorporate partnerships into their business even as they start?
Okay. Without agribusiness, if we only depend on the production, we can't go far, because the production has to be converted into a money-making business, and this is where now we embrace agribusiness. Probably just to mention, agribusiness is a very broad term, and we can think of it as a complete value chain, in the sense that you have to really understand the production, and you have to understand also the processing of your commodity, and then also be able to understand the market strategies. This one, we do have marketing specialists also in Karo and in many other places. So we would really be interested in meeting such people who are interested in doing agribusiness, especially using the products that we have, because we can be able to connect them to also the people that can assist them in financing and also in training them, so that they now are able to do their business in a more efficient manner.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Monica. And George, like she clearly highlighted, you can come as you are and you will get, of course, a one-stop shop at Calro. But when it comes to you, George, what are some of the ABCs that are needed, or the characteristics that are needed to make a good pitch when it comes to agribusiness?
No, that's a very interesting point, and it reflects back right onto the school, the institution side of things, because one of the things that we have worked together with Calro on is internships. We share and even work together with them on internships. The reason for this is because if somebody wanted to take a project such as growing potatoes, he needs to have been exposed onto varieties, onto where to get it. Now, fast forward, he comes out after school, he's got the basic knowledge, he's been done an internship. In that internship, one of the critical elements that we cover in our side of the Syngenta Foundation is sharing administrative skills and business skills. That's those two. Administration means procurement, how to handle your staff and the basic things. The second side of it is procurement. What are you procuring, why, and for what rate, and for use where, and what's the demand for it, that service. So procurement, we also expose staff to expose them to issues like services and products. Those are two different elements. So one of the biggest challenges in building all that coming out through as value chains are built or value chains are set up is that the youth are not given a chance to learn the elements that are required to participate in those value chains. And one of those elements is basically financial literacy service. We know there are banks in Kenya who conduct that as part of the loan processes. The PPPs have also allowed groups to access money, the youth to access youth funds. But now, on top of that, de-risking the whole process requires also new tools that have come in, which most people might not know, which is agricultural insurance tools, which are weather-based, The cow Dr. Monica talked about is one of those that are now easily accessible, but we still need to get that information out. And these are some of the issues that we try to get to the institutions, talk to the lecturers, talk to the students in their classes. And as part of field days, we are trying now more and more to hold those field days and activities in the schools so that the students generate interest and understand how the situation is. And finally, the problem of credit for agriculture is slowly coming in to be more realistic, because long ago, if you wanted to borrow money, you have to give security. But the argument goes that you can give a very nice building as a security, but the soil, if it is not tested by, for example, a scientist at Calro, and it has disease, nothing will grow, irrespective of the security. So all these bits and pieces is what we call project management and the administration side of it. And the earlier we expose our youth or our future generation to that, the more interest it makes it easier to enter into the value chain and the particular points of it. Thank you.
All right. And Judge, even as to continue with your point, even as we incorporate the youth, what is the role of the aging farmers? Because, you know, they have all this wealth of experience with them. It doesn't matter whether they learned it in school, but they've been farming all this time. What role do they play when it comes to partnerships?
That's a very good point again, and I missed that, because the older generation, or the real farmers, now have practical experience. They've done it actually for years and years, and they can predict even weather. There are some of them in the dry areas, they'll tell you, I'm not planting this year, because they know every 5 years there's a drought, for example. So those are the most ideal locations and points to work with as demonstration centers, because of the trust the community holds them in, the respect they enjoy with our cultural systems in the rural areas, and the way our national administrative structure is set up. Because if you get the older person, you'll find in the village he's a natural leader. And being a leader, he'll be respected and can be a very good point of disseminating information, which is through a demonstration point. So that's one side of it. The second side of it is we have made a mistake. I'm talking we, including myself, and I'm sure even Monica will tell you that in our younger days, we never took them as there would be any aid. But as time went on, we found out that local knowledge is very critical in planning any activity or any business. You must have some local knowledge. So I think that those would be my major points there. Thank you.
All right. And Dr. Monica, does Calro as well work with the farmers, the elderly farmers?
Sure it does. If I can mention that we do have a practical training center, and the vision was to even increase these centers so that all the technologies that we have developed here, they can be able to be disseminated in terms of training. And we can also give kind of incubation space for those people who want to do technical, who want to have a technical feeling of the business they want to engage in. In fact, Caro has trained very many institutions, people from the institutions, for example, the prison guards. They probably would want to perfect their grafting skills, and they can come to the center, the practical training center. Right now we have the practical training center at Thika, and they can be able to be trained so that they are able now to do what they want to practice in a better way. And this is also another public-private partnership where the government, this government institution feels there is something that they can benefit another, maybe a private or a government institution. More importantly, KARO is able to also work with the farmers. When they buy our products, we can be able to follow them and be able to help them so that they now achieve that status where they can be independent and they can be able to do that business which they were trained on. In the trials that we usually carry out, we do them together with the farmers or the consumers of that technology. And this is a good way of quickly making them adopt those technologies which we develop in the institution.
Dr. Monica, technology is changing the agriculture ball game altogether. George, just how important is technology in agriculture and how has it changed, let's say, from 10 years ago? What are some of the specific differences that you note now that were not there, let's say, 10 years ago?
Thank you. Technology has now become a little bit more complicated because it has got a higher impact on society. There's more awareness. The people are more aware of the benefits. But taking it a little bit backward and taking it from the beginning is that we group technology in agriculture in the form of very basic items such as seeds, such as fertilizer. All those are technologies. Mechanization, all those come together as technologies. And the minute you want to now use one of them, it means there is some form of acquisition. There's going to be some exchange of resources, some money given, and you get something in return. So you'll either get fertilizer. Now, one of the changes in technology is the usage rate is one of the very important things that have changed. Long ago, some of the older people will tell you, no, we never used to use fertilizer, our soil was fertile. But today, because of lack of rotation, we've now lost some components of the soil, so now we have to add fertilizer. And we also add fertilizer because we are targeting higher yields because of the breeding systems that have changed also through the years. The third part of it is one element that we call the consumer. That's Dr. Monica talked about. The consumer now is there at every stage of the value chain, at the farm gate, at the distributor, distributing the chemicals and seeds, at the transporter. All those are consumers in one way or the other, and they need to be covered legally. Like recently, you see, we have potatoes, we are transferring seeds to somebody, you are buying chemicals, all those are covered legally. So technology has now changed, one, in the manner of acquisition, two, with the way we use them. The third part is the awareness creation, and on the fourth side is under our constitution or under the way we operate under the Ministry of Agriculture, under the public system, there are specific institutions now that are mandated to carry specific roles. And that mandate, now when we engage with KALRO, for example, as the Syngenta Foundation, it becomes a part of their outreach system, and it must accommodate what they are mandated to do. So all those factors packaged together are the changes.
And we also have to talk about job creation or lost jobs. Because with mechanization, with the adoption of technology, we are skipping some stages. We are removing some middlemen when it comes to the, the key sectors that were employing people. Are you worried that this may be sort of negative, may be received negatively by the youth? Because you're trying to encourage them to venture into this and create job opportunities, but at the same time, even as they use technology to bolster their production, to increase their output, at the same time, up-to-date technology also means reducing costs, and at the same time, reducing some key factors that were not used a couple of years ago.
No, that is a valid observation, and I'd take you back to what we talked about right from our academic school days, whereby you learned, or in your internship, you learned about administration and finance and credit and managing your business. That point you mentioned is very important because at a certain level, you will only be able to do it by manually. But once you reach a certain level, again, you reach a threshold, you cannot do that manually. So those trigger points, as I would call them, are the points that we need to make people aware of, so that, and we already have them in the country, but they are salient because we know very well that in the country we have a division that goes from 0 to 2.5 acres, or 0 to 5 acres, 5 to 10 acres. Now, if you look at that, that is one side of it. There are thresholds. The second side of it, in the form that there will be a loss of jobs or challenges in labor acquisition, if you look at our demographics in the population and you look at the way the census was conducted and some of the information that came about, manual labor is now less and less available. And in Eastern Kenya, for example, during the rainy season, if you are growing French beans for export, you won't get people to do the weeding because they are also going home to grow their maize. So those challenges are what creates the job market, the fluidity in the job market. So technology is definitely an aid, and it's managed carefully to help out cover these deficits. Technology will eventually cover deficits for us as we go forward. But the turnaround time will create those gaps like you mentioned. There'll be a short-term gap somewhere along the line.
Dr. Monica, how do we deal with technology disruption in the agriculture sector? We need technology. We need it. It's something that, of course, will accelerate the sector and drive it even forward when it comes to the contribution of the economy. But at the same time, how do we deal positively when it comes to disruptions caused by technology?
Are you saying disruption? Yes, technology, it actually encourages even more development. And what we would like to say is that if it is already, the government has used a lot of funds in developing such technologies and innovations, then it is only pertinent that it is absorbed, adopted, and utilized. And CARO has come up with different ways of making sure that this technology is absorbed. We already are coordinating several projects, for example, the Climate Smart Agriculture Project, and we have also that is World Bank funded. We also have the Agrify project by EU funded, and it is now getting into commercializing these technologies which are already in CARO. I would be glad to say that we are developing. We have not reached that level that we can say that we really don't need to do a lot of that dissemination of the technologies. We need the technologies so that they can not only, we are even looking for food security, because we have not secured food security in this country. And the way to do it is by using those technologies and innovations, even as we talk about the employment. And actually, when you think of the large sizes, the diminishing large sizes, this is where now we need those technologies on irrigation. We need technologies on high tunnel development and utilization, so that we can be able to maximize the productivity of what we are growing. So in all, I would want to say that research should really be more funded, and the outcome of that research will spearhead the development of all the developing countries.
Now, Monica, let's now move to another very critical point when it comes to the agriculture sector: climate change. Where are we, And are we having more partners coming in on board with probable solutions when it comes to climate change and the agriculture sector?
Yes, I think climate change, it is us who need to address it. Even as we get partners outside and internal, the researcher or that person who is, or that institution that is working on climate smart are the ones who are designing ways of mitigating the climate change that we are all experiencing. And I can say, I'm happy to say that CARO is coordinating the Climate Smart Agriculture Project, which covers around 23 counties. And in all these counties, they have identified the needs that they have so that they can now be able to work closely with CARO to address those needs which have already been identified in their counties. And this is a very good approach because it gives the person who will consume that technology the power to say what he needs or she needs to research on, and also what will benefit that area in the best way. Let me say that CARO is really, the biggest clientele are the counties, because the counties, that is where agriculture is happening. And by working closely with the counties, we have been able to reach many farmers and many commercial entrepreneurs in agriculture. Thank you very much.
All right, Dr. Monica. And George, climate change. Sustainable farming is slowly becoming a norm, especially in the country, and is very popular when it comes to the youth, as well as sustainably rearing animals. Talk to us a little bit about this.
Yeah, I think that's an appropriate question at this point, because even the theme for your the Farmers Expo, the Mkulima Expo, has the word resilience inside it. And so climate smart agriculture now becomes, from your theme yesterday and today, becomes climate smart and resilience agriculture. So sustainability is one element that has been transferred from a purely financial and business perspective onto an operational perspective on the farm. And this has now come about because even there's a lot of new investment in this country that is climate-based, that is based on activities, on how sustainable your farming is. So if you went to we had the benefit of seeing the new land use maps or crop suitability maps in Calro. So those are the kind of things somebody would be taking off in a checklist to see how sustainable your enterprise would be. There were areas appropriate for sugarcane, for cassava, and so on. That's one side of it. The next side of it is, how are you managing your soil? The simple stuff is the soil management is now becoming more critical. In other words, erosion, soil conservation, very simple tools that our parents did that we don't do now. We just open up the piece of land and plow. The next side of that is the animals that we are keeping. There's what we call the stocking density. And again, the stocking density is the number of animals you require per unit area or require a certain area of the farm. That now again will come into the business side and on the operational side. Because if you can keep only 2, you can't get a bigger loan, and it will produce less of milk or something. But if you can keep more, it now becomes the quality of the grass, and then you must plant things that are able and you're able to rotate and so on. So this, and the last part of it in sustainability, again, that is useful to the public, and I think Monica would be better placed to speak than me, is we've got a lot of information coming from the Kenya Forestry Research Institute on trees that are able to regenerate our soils because of their leaves falling. And these kind of combining that information together with our financial business models, we now talk about sustainability. But it's been generated by awareness, and the biggest driver is also based on nutrition. That's a bigger driver now in sustainability.
Thank you, George. And of course, let's just rope in Dr. Monica. Like he was saying, protecting the soil is a key element when it comes to sustainable farming. Talk to us a little bit about this.
Yes, Judge is very correct, because we find that so many people don't realize that they need to know the status of their soils even before they put the crop they need. And this information can be attained at a very cheap cost. For example, at our CARO, the Food Crops Research Institute at the National Labs, just near at Kabete, we have laboratories which can be able to test your soils, and also you will be given advice on what the nutrients you need in that soil. This is very important because, for example, we are aware of the fertilizer issue. We find people using the DAPs, which actually should not be used in the acidic soils in the highlands, and they are not aware. So they continue depleting their soils of the necessary nutrients without getting any benefits but the cost. So we really want to encourage especially soil analysis and also getting advice, professional advice, because we know this equipment of soil testing now have become mobile, and you can probably get your testing done, and probably you have no power to know whether it will be correct or not. Both can be good, but the wet testing that is done at our laboratories has been proven to be very effective and very precise. It has the best precision. So I think it is very pertinent information at this forum, because we are talking of resilience in climate change situations, where we can be able to maximize on the resources that we have. And soil is a natural resource that we have. Apart from just the soils, I think we also need to take care of our land, how the topography of our land. You remember we used to talk of soil erosion, and this has leached out a lot of nutrients from our soils. So this should also be incorporated, and all this advice is able to be obtained. For example, if you visit the CARO centers, if you ask for such kind of training, and if you also go to the CAOP platform that I talked about earlier, it is possible to get this information. I don't say that we are the panacea. We have the solutions for everything, and this is why we are researching, and we hope, because I can say climate change and all agricultural setups, they are very dynamic. It will change according to the population of what we are putting in that environment. For example, if we talk of polyculture where we mix, where we grow different types of crops in one place, it becomes easier and it becomes productive rather than the monoculture.
All right, Dr. Monica, thank you so much. We also have to address the pandemic very quick before we wind up the forum. COVID-19 has had a huge impact when it comes to key sectors of the economy, and of course agriculture is no exemption. George, what will the 2021, we're already in 2021, farmer look like? What do they need to have? Because we're still in the middle of the pandemic, but at the same time, we still have to continue producing food and we still have to continue increasing our output. So what does the farmer need to have this year?
Thank you very much, because one of the biggest challenges we learned early last year when the pandemic set in was that traditionally we've grown up and we've been trained that extension, you actually visit the farmer and you have to sit in a group and talk about the issue and visit the demonstration farm. But what the pandemic did was now we have to use a lot of remote learning mechanisms. That was one side of it. The third part of it is the messaging system that is coming out that we had to use at that time. Now, the farmers had to transition from that traditional role into the remote management system. Now, in doing those two, I think the most important thing is that going forward, we need a mix of the two, because we use something called social distancing, and again, we have to continue with that there. And again, as far as possible, also send remote learning mechanisms for the farmers. The last part of it, and where again the PPPs have helped, is that because of the distribution of various institutions in this country, such as CALRO, such as KEFIS, you are able to get services much nearer than you instead of traveling longer distances. So again, that will be something that, again, decentralization, devolution, all these things will work together. So to us, we found out that even working in a multinational, a lot of our activities now become more remotely managed, and therefore, our biggest challenge in this year is to build the capacity of the farmer to be able to absorb the remotely sent messages. And I think I would leave it at that.
And very quick, Dr. Monica, how do we navigate the virus in the agriculture sector?
How do I navigate what?
How do we navigate the virus in the agriculture sector, even as we wind up, very briefly?
Okay, the bias, the agriculture sector bias.
The virus, the pandemic. So how exactly do we do business in the middle of a pandemic?
Okay, so I think just like George has mentioned, we have to really enhance the use of that protection. And I can see we have already tried to manage the research even with the COVID-19. For example, now instead of meeting the places that we used to meet, the gatherings, etc., as I mentioned, we have adopted digital or rather virtual meetings so that we can be able to still communicate very easily. And what the beauty of this communication is that it's even becoming cheaper because you can connect wherever you are, if you are at the field, and we can be able to do business together. But as George has also put it, people have to really adopt to the new norm because they were used to face-to-face communication. But now it is getting more and more limited, and we want to embrace the new norm so that we can stay protected. The other thing is that we have now these platforms which we want to enhance their utilization. This being one of them. For example, these 2 days, we have been able to reach out like never before, that we could have a conference running at the CARO headquarters and also in our 4 other centers, which are main centers that have many technologies where the farmers can be able to benefit from the online communication. So this is a good way, but we also want to encourage also the farmers and the researchers as they get to the field to be in the right attire and to be able to encourage those farmers also to work in the right attire to protect themselves. Agriculture actually has come up to be one of the areas that have increased or that have been enhanced even with the COVID-19, because when people stay around their homes, they can adopt to that type of intensive farming where they don't need probably.
All right, Monica. Thank you. Dr. Monica, thank you so much for your input. Of course, you have a lot to talk to us about. And if you want to get more information, of course, it is available at the KALRO headquarters in Kabete, here in the capital, Nairobi, where they are having their Mkulima Expo 2021. Very good insights when it comes to the agriculture sector as a whole. Today, we were discussing the role of the public-private partnerships and how they're tapping into bolstering profits for the smallholder farmers, as well as the role of the women and the youth. And also, we're discussing the impact of technology when it comes to the agriculture sector. Please stand by. Of course, my colleague is coming in, Brenda Zeda, with more in relation to the news. But my other colleague, Noah Kipkemboi, is standing by at the expo in Kabete, and he will be able to tell you more about what the exhibitors have in store for you. I have been your host, Brenda Kerubo, and thank you so much for watching this forum. Bye-bye. Have a lovely afternoon.
Nairobi, Dairy Research Institute Naivasha, Food Crops Research Institute Njoro, and Non-Ruminants Research Institute Kakamega, where all COVID-19 protocols will be observed or attended virtually on KTN News, KTN Farmers TV, or all Farm Kenya online platforms for a live broadcast. This is the Expo you don't want to miss. Entry is absolutely free. Farm Kenya, working to secure your growth.